The Dharma, incomparably profound and exquisite, is rarely met with even in hundreds of thousands and millions of kalpas. We now can see it, hear it, accept it, hold it. May we realize the true mind of the Tathagata. Today is day 6 of this February 2019 session here at Mountain Gate in northern New Mexico. And I'd like to share with you something of a rather thick book titled, appropriately, Letting Go. The author, who's no longer alive, was David R. Hawkins, MD, PhD. So he was both a psychiatrist, which is an MD, and also apparently had done quite a bit of research as well, scientific research, to get his PhD, and onward as well. He was a rather unusual individual. When he was 3 years old, he had a, what sounds like quite close to a true awakening experience. And then when he was in high school, he had a paper route in rural Wisconsin. And in the winter, one night, this paper route was quite long, many miles long, only slightly less than 20 miles long, which he would ride on his bicycle. And one winter night, the bicycle slid on the ice and the papers went flying. He went down, and in a rush of anguish, he broke through a crust of ice in I don't know whether it's a snowdrift or what, and carved himself out a little snow hole and climbed into it. It must have been quite out in the middle of nowhere, and so to be able to get back on his bike and somehow leave. It doesn't say whether he was injured or not, but at any rate, it sounds like he almost died of hypothermia. The description he gives of being quite cold, his clothes frozen stiff, and finding himself curled up in this little snow hole and feeling a pervasive warmth and a feeling of deep peace coming over him. This is something that is described by people who are near death. And he was rudely awakened, it seemed like, by his father, who was quite concerned and had managed to find him, and sort of shook him out of his dangerous zone. And obviously he survived, got him back home to warmth, but it was a remarkable experience for him, and there was a major level of letting go that happened as part of that. And he apparently had a number of other experiences ongoing that increase that level of insight. We would really call it awakening in the Buddhist sense, a true letting go of who he thought he was. And this fascinated him. He ended up becoming a psychiatrist and doing further research into consciousness, and ended up becoming quite popular, apparently, as a speaker, as a spiritual teacher, and as a psychiatrist. And it seems like he also, as part of what unfolded for him, ended up with some very significant psychic abilities, which can come. It's not what we seek, but they can come as part of our process of letting go who we think we are. And that's basically what this book is about. He goes into fair detail with it. The book, as I said, is called Letting Go, the Pathway of Surrender. And surrender is what it is, but not surrender in the, oh God, type surrender. It is surrender in the sense of being so fully present that, in a sense, there's nothing to surrender. We've already surrendered any ideas of who or what we are in order to be able to surrender. And that is the letting go that will allow us to open to the profound truth of who and what we are. His book is relatively rare, at least in my experience, in that it goes into quite a bit of detail on how to make that happen. A much more simple book is that by Eugene Gendlin called Focusing, wherein we focus on the physical experience of our body, particularly at times when we feel caught in something, an emotion, a thought, an idea, we're uncomfortable, we're starting to act out, whatever, then to be able to go inward and to feel the physical experience of what that is, not the thoughts. And Dr. Hawkins goes into all kinds of explanations about thoughts. From his perspective, thoughts create emotions. It may or may not be that way because sometimes emotions come up or not emotions. Let's say this. I think we're getting tied up in semantics here. Because feelings can be translated as emotions, or they can be translated as sensations. When we have sensations in our body that are not comfortable, we usually will escape into feelings, which then we escape into thoughts. We distance ourselves from whatever is going on in our body. We hover above it. We don't like it, and so that's the way it appears we can avoid feeling it. But that doesn't get rid of it, unfortunately. In fact, it can bury it in our psyche, in our body. And the way out, as Mitra-roshi used to say, is the way in. Or the way in is the way out, whatever, however you want to put it. But at any rate, to let go, one needs to go within one's experience of the moment. And that involves a letting go of everything else we would use to distract ourselves. And we human beings distract ourselves in many, 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 many ways. All you have to do is look at the news, Yahoo News or any other news, and a lot of it is full of opinions about things. Opinions, which in one moment something is considered to be important and true and effective, and in another moment it's dead. It's no longer popular, it's no longer seen as something to buy into. And yet we run our lives on opinions, and particularly on the opinions of other people about us. And they can be painful. I remember when I was in high school, one of the very popular girls in high school called me a zombie one day. And to be honest, I was quite shut down back then. But it hurt. And especially as kids grow up and enter into teenage years, there's so much jostling for the affections of our peers, the respect of our peers, the respect of our elders. And is that who we really are? It can engender all kinds of painful emotions. It can bring forth pride. It can bring forth desire. And basically these are uncomfortable experiences. Who is the true person? Who is the true person? Rinzai famously said, there's a true person of no rank. meaning no description, no rank, no standing. It's a true person of no rank coming in and out of the doors of your senses. If you haven't seen it yet, see it now. See it now. And this is a koan in the Rinzai way of training. We all have that true person of no rank. We all are that true person of no rank. So who are we? In order to discover that, we need to let go of who we think we are. And the first thing that comes up for most people is fear. We're afraid to let go. We're afraid, particularly as we go further and further into our Zen practice, we're afraid we're going to disappear. If we let go of who we think we are, then who are we? It can be quite frightening. This is one reason why awakening is called the Great Death. It's the great dying to who we think we are, who we assume we are, to the self-image. And necessarily so because it's the self-image that keeps us caught. We live in boxes, chained, limited, so much by this need to maintain the self-image, by this need to be somebody. That said, something does need to be said about ego, because a lot of Zen practitioners equate ego with self-image. And psychologically, they're not exactly the same thing. As one noted psychiatrist said, you have to be somebody to let go of who you are. You have to have a strong ego, or at least a functioning, stable ego, in order to let go your ideas of who you are. It's not the same as the self-image. It's the self-image that we feel such a compulsion to protect, to enhance, that leaves us so vulnerable to anybody's opinion of us, or any experience where we think to ourselves, oh, that was dumb, or I failed, or any of the other things. And it's this great weight of baggage that keeps us from finding out who we really are and experiencing the incredible freedom that comes from that. The freedom to live, the freedom to be, the freedom to respond to circumstances rather than to react to them. The freedom to be okay no matter what people are saying about us. Of course, as we grow up, a certain amount of attention to that is appropriate. What our teachers say to us is often, but not always, appropriate. We learn how to function in society according to certain rules in society, and that's important to understand. But there's a lot of fixed ideas about things, and there is abuse. And that's not helpful, and it's not right. Letting go, the path of surrender. Let's share a little bit from this book. After researching most of the various stress reduction and consciousness methods, this approach, which he has outlined in his book, stands out for its sheer simplicity, efficiency, clinical efficacy, absence of questionable concepts, and rapidity of observable results. Its simplicity is deceptive and almost disguises the real benefit of the technique. Simply stated, it sets us free from emotional attachments. It verifies the observation made by every sage that attachments are the primary cause of suffering. The mind with its thoughts is driven by feelings. Each feeling is the cumulative derivative of many thousands of thoughts. Because most people throughout their lives repress, suppress, and try to escape from their feelings, the suppressed energy accumulates and seeks expression through psychosomatic distress, bodily disorders, emotional illnesses, and disordered behavior in interpersonal relationships. The accumulated feelings block spiritual growth and awareness, as well as success in many areas of life. And then he talks about how this surrender, which doesn't require a book to read about it, can affect our physical ability to live healthily. It can affect our mental capacity and our mental ability to function at a level that is appropriate and helpful. It can affect our interpersonal relationships. Basically, it affects everything in our whole life. It is possible to become free. The Buddha experienced it. Countless human beings down the generations have experienced it. Modern human beings have experienced it. And all of us can as well. And it requires courage to face whatever we are hiding from that obscures this person of true rank, of no rank. It requires a willingness to look into the dark side of our being, the shadow side, as Jung called it. It requires a willingness to walk into fear, to taste it, to feel it in our body. Not to think about it, but to feel it. It, in a certain way, requires humility, a willingness not to have to be somebody. And the base level is it requires letting go. And that letting go is affected by tuning in with courage, with that willingness to walk into fear. Again and again and again. This is why the 3 pillars of Zen are faith that we can do it, doubt that how we are living, who we think we are, is accurate, that maybe there's something more and more free, and determination, a willingness to walk through whatever we have to walk through in order to open to it. And we can. It means facing wherever you're caught. But a long time ago, somebody at the Rochester Zen Center had an awakening experience during a sesshin. And she first described what happened before that awakening experience. She walked into a sesshin and felt that she had to, as she put it, virtually nail herself to the mat. In other words, the last thing she wanted to do was zazen. There was a great deal of resistance to it. But she stuck it out. That's where courage and determination come forth. And she did have a Kensho experience, deep enough that, as she wrote, this practice is truly bodhisattvic. First, it shows us where we're caught, and then it sets us free. And we cannot be set free if we don't know what we're caught by. And that is part of the challenge of Zen practice, is seeing clearly, without any decoration, without any sugarcoating, exactly where we are caught. And that is a prerequisite, at least in my experience, to becoming free from whatever it is we're caught by. And this freedom is something that cannot be described. Not to have to act out of this need to defend. Not to become embarrassed, because there's no reason to become embarrassed if we're not caught on some self-image that is being challenged. To understand pain in such a way that we don't try to shut it down, but we're free of it. And to allow our innate compassion and wisdom to function fully. All of this can come forth if we are willing to let go, to surrender to the moment as it appears to be. It makes an enormous difference. It frees us. And every one of us can do this if we're willing to do it. And there's not much more that can be said, really. Letting go. This is what our practice is about. The tool, the major tool we have for letting go is the extended out breath. It does it faster than anything I've experienced in my many years, more than 3 decades of Zen practice. It's effective. Extending the out breath, fully present with the experience of breathing out in the body, but without any pictures of where it is coming from or going to. Just the bodily experience. Requires a letting go at a certain point of everything else that would be distracting to us. If we find ourselves able to multitask, extending the out breath, and still thinking, feeling stuff other than the experience of the out breath, then we're not fully present with it. We're not really doing the Susok'kan. We're not really extending the out breath, because if you extend it far enough with that total bodily presence, you have to be present. There's no way around it. And that is tremendous. It trains our brain to let go, not to be caught in things. And over time, it makes a difference, a big difference in our life, and opens us up to some really big letting goes. Then we also have the curiosity, the openness to possibility that we allow the breath to be filled with. It's kind of hard to express this in words, but we extend the out breath not as a mechanical experience, but as a reaching for, we don't even know what it is. But we know that somehow if we reach far enough, there is freedom to be experienced and lived. And to go about extending the out breath with that attitude is important and makes a big difference. And that curiosity, that openness to possibility, that need to know what's beyond, just barely beyond our reach, is an important aspect in koan work as well. And the two combined, but even the Susok'kan alone, the extended out breath alone, is an incredibly powerful practice that brings about surrender. If we are willing to walk into it, use it regularly, extensively, it makes a difference. And if you want, you can read the book, Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender, David R. Hawkins, MD, PhD. It's got a little bit of hype in it, which you can ignore. But here and there's some real nuggets of important teaching. But still, if you sit on your cushion or in your chair and just do the Susok'kan in the way that was just described, you'll get there without having to read a book. Thank you for listening. We'll stop now and recite the 4 vows.